It's a magical, mystical time. It's anecdotal adventures.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Anecdotal Adventures Reads Worm. Today we read through Arc 10, Parasites. Last week we read through Arc 9, Sentinels, which was just a long arc of interludes with the words. I'm one of the hosts, Ashley, and this is my co-host.
I'm Cassidy.
Almost forgot to do introductions. Peak professionalism, as always. But we hopped right, basically from Arc 9 into Arc 10, because Arc 9 ends off.
You hear heavy breathing in the microphone. It's not me. My dog is just all up in my business right now.
Leica's very cute. But with Shadowstalker getting defeated by the Undersiders and unceremoniously kidnapped, and that sort of leads in right into 10.1. Oh boy. So the Undersiders capture Shadowstalker, and we see more of Imp. Did you make the connection of who Imp was before it told you?
No.
It's an audio medium. You can't just...
No, I absolutely did not.
You do know who it is?
It told us?
Did you not know who it is?
No, I didn't think I picked up on it. I think, did they like straight up say her name? Which chapter was this in? Hold on.
It doesn't ever say Aisha is Imp. But Brian's sister is Imp.
Okay.
You are supposed to have figured that out by the end of Arc 10.
You said before they said it. They didn't say it, and I didn't figure it out.
But it starts some pretty, it does some pretty explicit statements later on. But yes, Aisha is Imp. So I hope that recontextualizes some things we're going to talk about later.
Okay. I had suspected, but I didn't think that Brian would ever let her get involved, which is why I was like, it's probably not her.
It's cute that you think he had a choice.
Fair.
The things we learn in 10.1, it's just the Undersiders hiding out in this apartment. Alec is left alone with Shadowstalker to do something, and we don't find out what it is till the end of the chapter, but it is the only thing that Shadowstalker, reacts appalled to, which sort of sets the tone. Quite well. In fact, there's this little thing I wanted to read about Taylor trying to justify what is going to happen to Sophia, to herself. We were doing this to Sophia, I told myself, the same girl who had abused, insulted, and tormented me almost every school day since I'd started high school. She'd punched, kicked, and shoved me, had ruined my belongings, insulted me, thrown food at me, humiliated me, and had goaded others into doing much the same things. She was the one who had pushed me to that do-or-die point where my powers manifested. If that wasn't enough, she had tried to kill me less than an hour ago, not because I was a criminal that deserved the death penalty, but because I had seen her unmasked. I was inconvenient. And with all that in mind, I couldn't be sure that she deserved this. And the this that she's referring to, we find out after Alec plays a bit of a prank on the Undersiders. He can take full control over a person, at least their muscles, not their brain, which makes his old name Hijack make a little more sense. Not a fan?
Not a fan at all. Not a fan at all.
But we'll get to it because he has a whole big interlude later. And this is one of the first sort of divisive things in Worm. It's the Alec and Sophia situation. We even got a comment about it that was just, for this episode, Alec or Sophia?
Neither. You don't have to pick between two evils.
We will get there, though. We will get there.
Let my stance be known now.
We have a lot to get there before that, but so we're not holding you on that cliffhanger. We also get a little bit more information on the new dynamic of the Undersiders team.
Just pained hiss noise.
Yeah. I wanted to read specifically that Taylor's thoughts on Rachel's change of attitude toward her. I couldn't blame her for being angry. Her dogs, some of her closest friends in the world, had died because she had been saving me, only for her to find out shortly afterward that I had been a traitor. Maybe saving me hadn't been her primary motivation, but it seemed she'd used the past week and an unhealthy dose of simmering anger to revise her perception of things, so I was to blame for what had happened. It wasn't getting better either. She seemed to get angrier with every hour spent in my company, and I was worried I would have to face the brunt of it very soon. I mean, this is the setup chapter for all the payoffs we're gonna get later. But thoughts on 10.1 before we jump to 10.2? Anything you had to say?
No, 10.1 was a lot of setup.
Okay. Well, 10.2 is a flashback to Taylor coming back to rejoin the Undersiders. She lets herself get punched and kicked a couple times by Rachel until Rachel picks up a board and is like probably gonna murder her.
Oh, straight up.
Oh yeah, before Lisa steps in. And the Undersiders allow Taylor to make her case to why she should return. And she tries to explain the unreasonable thought process that she had is oh, I was going to betray you guys, but then I wasn't, a week ago. I know, sounds unbelievable, but it's actually true. And she uses her crush on Gru as some evidence for why she was not going to betray the team.
Everyone was like, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, except for Gru, who's like, no, I don't buy it. And even Alec was like, I don't ever pay attention to that team drama shit, and I picked up on the fact that she liked you. It was so obvious, it was irritating.
So, actually, I buy it. That's a reasonable excuse.
But I think it's important to note that Taylor is not coming back groveling to the Undersiders to rejoin them because she needs their friendship here. That's not what she's doing. No. This is step one in Taylor's penultimate plan to get Coil into Coil's trusted group.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So I wanted to read basically her justification for why she was coming back. When had things been good? What point in time was I so eager to return to, where I hadn't been racked by guilt or nervousness? By the time I got over my fear of getting caught, I'd run away from home and cut ties with my dad. Then, before I could come to terms with that, I'd found out about Dinah, which had affected me more than anything else. I terrorized hostages, maimed a supervillain, hurt superheroes, but it was Dinah that left me lying awake at night, feeling helpless, feeling like I was the scum of the earth. And I couldn't help her from the outside. That, more than anything, was why I was here. I wasn't strong enough to fight Coil on my own. I couldn't go to the heroes and rely on them to handle it, not with Coil's powers giving him 2 attempts to escape, 2 attempts to any counterattacks, 2 attempts to track down the person who'd informed him and deal with her and take his pick of the outcomes he wanted. That wasn't even getting into the more complex uses of his abilities, only using one of his concurrent realities to try something, doing it over and over again until he got a result he wanted to keep. I couldn't beat him in any kind of confrontation. So
don't confront him.
Yeah,
What's the solution?
That's not what she's doing. She's making some plans.
Which is a big brain move. I feel I'm also partial to confrontation, though. So I see where she's going with it.
You're a very confrontational person.
Yeah. I would have
on the-
never been able to get to
No.
that conclusion.
You'd lose very quickly.
I would lose her. That's why I need a guy in the chair, Ashley. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
That's why I'm friends with you.
So yeah, Taylor says out loud, I want things to return to the way things used to be. And then internally she's like, but I don't. There's no point in time I'd want to return to.
I want it to be normal.
Because nothing has ever been good.
And
it has never been fine. And all the times I said that, I was lying to myself.
Like, oh, do you want to go back to elementary school when Emma was still your best friend? Is that the good time we want to refer to?
But the Undersiders come to a vote. Lisa and Alec are very quickly on board for the Taylor joining back onto the team. Brian eventually votes yes to his reasoning seems to be more for himself than for any of the other members of the group. And then Rachel sticks with her no vote, but it's enough votes to allow Taylor back on the Undersiders team.
And I feel like this is when I should have picked up that Aisha was imp because she was like, do I get a vote?
And all of them said no.
Yeah.
Oh, you
I
don't
feel like I should have been like, maybe it's her. Okay, I might not be the most intelligent person, but I'll figure it out eventually. Ashley just had to tell me.
Yeah, there is also a part in, I think it's this chapter, that she's like, it's weird that Aisha's here.
Second hint in this chapter where I should have been like, imp, Aisha. And imp's thing deals with shadow. I am dumb. It's okay.
You're just kind of cutting out a lot. Can you repeat that?
And I think I might have yanked on my mic. Is that better? And Aisha's superpowers deal with shadow. So I'm a doof. All of those things should have been like,
all right. Duh. But I really liked the sort, not really ending part of the chapter, but the ending part of the break, the chapter line break they have before they move on to the next part, where they vote yes, but they give her like some conditions that she has to accept to rejoin. And she says in her inner monologue, I had told myself I would rise above the likes of Sophia and Armsmaster. I was all too aware of their flaws, and first and foremost among them was arrogance, pride. So I'd swallow mine. Pretty nice sentiment there, but we move forward in time, where the Undersiders are using possessed Shadowstalker to try and infiltrate the PRT headquarters by pretending to be captured by her while she's under Alec's control, and it opens with, there are so many ways this could go wrong. And my next line in the notes is, oh boy, was that the right assessment?
so many.
Because I feel like pretty much most of the things that could go wrong do go wrong.
To a grand scale. The absolute peak of wrong, I feel like.
Oh yeah, but there's some other things before we get to 10.3 where the things start going wrong. Where Alec as Shadowstalker shoots Gru twice. The only one who does that too. Which I found fun, because in my notes I put revenge for having to sleep with the dogs. But we find out that the PRT has some standard protocol for masters and for strangers and for parahumans that have mental effects on people. As Weld, new team leader, we see his effectiveness in the field from the villain's point of view this time to our main hero's detriment. When he says, just keeping in mind that Regent is the highest rated master in the city, I'd like for you to give us this week's password. So Lisa prepped them for that, so she has the password. Has the password ready, but Weld springs off a few more traps, a few more conversation traps. And though Alec catches on to the first one, he can't make the right answer. So Weld sniffs them out. So things go wrong in fight.
He was so close.
It was
He
so close.
close.
It was like, you just one person to the left. You were so close.
And the only way that, like, I feel like if Vista was just a little bit more pissed off with Sophia and wasn't just like had just had the conversation where, like, no, fuck you, it's okay for me to emote. If Vista was just a little bit more upset, he would have gotten it, but he didn't.
Sort of deeply unsatisfying after seeing him see him navigate between not one, but two traps, but then fail at the third hurdle.
It hurts so much. Like, it wasn't Kid Win. I was like, yes. Clock blocker?
No! But 10.3, the fight begins. The wards, round 2 versus the outsiders. But this time, Imp's here. And we see some of her powers in action when Imp has stranger-based powers. I feel like that's safe to say because it takes a minute for Taylor to remember that Imp exists. Throughout the battle, whenever Imp is brought up, she's like, do we have a stranger on the team? When Chet's like, there's a stranger involved. You're like, really? Do we?
Huh?
We do? Weird.
A stranger? What's that? Don't know her.
Also, I think somewhere in here in 10.3, she also remembers that, like, oh yes, this person has some relation to Brian. I think that also happens. I think the hints are being dropped left and right.
I am pretty sure I read this when I was tired. I think I read it after our last D&D session.
Okay. But we find but Taylor has found more horrifying ways to upgrade her bugs. As I had discovered that I could use hairspray to coat the abdomens and stingers of my bugs, and then dip said abdomens and stingers into some of the whatever it's called. I can't pronounce it.
Pepper spray.
Yeah, basically the stuff that's used in pepper spray.
It's just pepper spray.
Yeah, with a bowl of each in liquid form and 2 single file lines of bugs, I could do a fair number before I went out in costume. It did wind up killing some of the less durable ones eventually, either through the hairspray obstructing breathing or the pepper spray getting on the bug, but the end result was that I'd stumbled onto a weapon while trying to experiment with defenses. I had figured out how to use my bugs as a delivery mechanism, smearing pepper spray onto fresh stings and bites. I could jam their abdomens into people's noses, mouth, and eyes to cause intense burning and pain to the point that it made them nauseous.
Oh my god.
Taylor, always finding ways to make her powers actively more horrifying.
I have the amount of, like, secondhand ouch I'm feeling right now is intense. I have pepper spray. I've never gotten pepper spray in an open wound, bug bite. I've gotten it in my mouth technically, but not a lot. Like, I've never had, like, a bee deliver pepper spray into my food cavity. So it sounds painful.
Yes. We also find out that Shadowstalker is conscious while being controlled, which is also horrifying.
I'm so glad superpowers don't exist in real life, at least to my knowledge. Because that's one of my biggest, like, phobias is not being in control of my body. I couldn't.
We'll get to it. But Kid Win reveals a new Tinker toy, electric sort of little globes off of his armor that go around killing bugs. And I put in my notes, is it bad that I'm still kind of rooting for the wards?
No, it's not bad. They're the
actual heroes. Like, they are the reason the Undersiders are here is to steal information from the PRT.
Yeah.
Information that I do think we'll find out what it actually is later that will be, I think, helpful for them to know, but still not great. But they finish off most of the wards, basically, but then Dragon. They're gonna have to deal with the world's best Tinker.
Can you imagine being like, success, and then being like, who now? Like, literally the number one name in the game is coming here. Fantabulous.
Uno. Woo. 10.4, I have in my notes, dealing with dragon, the chapter. But they trap them. She traps the Undersiders in the building. So the Undersiders spread out and start searching around for things they can use to help them. They steal Kidwin's guns, but because we find out that Kidwin's takes apart all the things he builds to build other things, they're filled with not great parts, so they can really only be used like once every time. So they're really unhelpful.
So funny.
But Tattletale does some talking, just trying to psych out Dragon, as always, like does a jab about the Dragon Slayers, who are mercenaries who've taken parts of Dragon's armored suits to outfit themselves as high-tech mercenaries. We'll find out more about them later in Dragon's Interlude.
More about that later.
More about that later. That's basically it's a lot of setup, okay? It's a lot of setup.
Yeah.
We're in a fight and there's still setup.
Like, we're in the climax part and it's still
we're technically in a payoff, but like we're also in the setup. That's what's great. There's a lot of setup, payoff, like all the ways in this story. Something is like always happening. It's always moving.
I want to see this as like an actual show or an animated series. It's already structured episodically. Like, please. Oh my god,
so
please.
Dragon shows up in the flesh, and the rest of the Protectorate on the way, and Cornelius's powers, the Undersiders have no way to escape before they get there. So we end on 10.4, it seems like they're screwed. 10.5 sort of ends up like though some of the wards come back, like Weld wakes up, so more fight breaks out while they're waiting. And in the end, Dragon sort of is alone with Taylor. And Dragon has a conversation with Skitter after Rachel maybe pushes her into containment foam. Maybe that happens. Yeah,
maybe.
Rachel tries to get her teammates captured or killed in this instance. And so Dragon has a conversation with Skitter about her priorities after the team seems to abandon her.
And Skitter's like, bitch, you don't even know! You don't know!
There's so many things!
There's so many more things that you just don't know! I have my priorities straight. It took me a really long time, but I think we're pretty close to there.
But so the lightning gun that has been lodged in to Dragon's sort of suit detonates, and Dragon moves away from Taylor so she doesn't kill her.
Go Dragon.
Nice sentiment. But Dragon moves away, revealing something horrifying inside her suit. It looked like a fetus. The features were crude, barely humanoid in any sense of the word. The eyes were half-formed, and it had no nose, only a beak-like mouth. The head was half again as large as the body below the neck, wires wove in and out of orifices. Had that been someone who was physically affected by their powers, I wasn't even sure if it was human.
More about that later.
The chapter. The arc. But the chapter ends with Taylor going to deal with the fact that Rachel's betrayal here.
A legit betrayal. Oh, I'm so mad.
Yeah, but 10.6, the rest of the Protector arrive, but they sort of get away and out of danger. But Taylor grabs her baton and smacks around Rachel in vengeance for trying to get her captured, and has this nice little monologue that I'm going to read. "You're a coward, Rachel," I spoke. "You just did the very same thing you hate me for almost doing. You stabbed me in the back. You fucked over your own teammate. I'm in a position to hurt you now, and I'm pissed enough to do it," I spoke, my voice low. "But I won't. This vendetta against me ends now. You got your shot at me. You fucked it up. If you're still mad at me, you fucking better cope. Got it?" When I spoke next, I bent low and whispered the words for her and her alone. "When you're tossing and turning and trying to sleep, remembering what I did and said here and trying and getting pissed off about it, remember that you were the weak one. You embarrassed yourself, fucked up. You were the weakling, the wuss who couldn't even confront me face to face. And knowing you like I do, I'm betting that's gonna gnaw at you. That's as much punishment as I could inflict, I think. That's on you, not me. You said it yourself a while back. It's a mistake to underestimate me. You want another shot at it? It had better be a really damn good one, because if it isn't, I'm going to survive. I'm going to get away. And then I might break your jaw for real, for starters. I'm going to treat you like a damned teammate, Rachel, but I'll go one step farther. You think you can put this behind you and satisfy yourself with what you tried to pull earlier tonight? Cool, because if you're willing, I'll come with you to help take care of your dogs. I'll bring fucking lunch if you want it. That's the deal I'm offering you, pissed as I am right now. I'll be your damn friend.
It's like you. Oh, you don't like me? I'm gonna be your friend. You're my friend now.
That has been a classic move in my childhood.
Oh, you don't like me?
I'm gonna hang out with you all the time.
That's such a bummer. Do you want goldfish?
Here, why don't you talk about it a little more? I'm sure get it out of your system.
You were totally a fruit snack kid, though, right? Sweet snacks instead of salty snacks.
Oh, never. I was a salt snacks kid. I love salty snacks. Yes.
I'm surprised.
Revelation.
Let me guess, partial to pretzels. Yeah. I see that.
Revelations are being made here. But Rachel storms off. But seeing Taylor stand up for herself is always nice. Seeing her confidence, having go back and reread chapter 1 in arc 1 and compare it to right now.
Oh, timid Taylor. She's not timid anymore. She's a bad bitch now.
Regent, throughout the following chapters, has slowly revealed more about the extent of his abilities, but I don't know how much he's telling the truth about them, considering what happens later. He says, I can't keep control of them while I'm sleeping, for people. And do I believe that? Do we believe that?
No, actually, I don't think I do.
Yeah. But Taylor has a talk with... Oh, it was also revealed later. We didn't really talk about this. Regent's the highest rated master in the city.
Go him, I guess?
This is interesting information. We didn't know. I guess
scary.
I think that answers the question earlier, where in the last arc I asked you, which one of the masters do you think was of concern? And you said, oh, it's definitely Taylor. They're setting it up to be Taylor.
Nope.
Nope.
Not Taylor.
Not Taylor.
Very much not Taylor.
Classic bait and switch, making you think it's the main character. It's not the main character.
It's
Surprise.
Not Taylor. I think they're actively becoming less concerned about Taylor because they were like, wait, was that morals? Did you have morals there for a second? What?
The gasp. But so Taylor talks about how the Regent's full use of his power is something that could get them on the advocated for lethal force list. Just
Probably
think about
has.
how different that would have played if Dragon was on that had been authorized to use lethal force there.
The story would have ended here.
Yep, they would be over.
But I mean, would have stayed there and let her suit detonate.
Alec pretends to agree with Taylor here. I think it's important to note the pretend. Because he says, yeah, sure, we should get rid of her. Yeah. Which, I mean, I guess he does eventually. He just didn't specify when.
That's a fantastic idea, Taylor. I'll totally do that. Thanks for your input.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
good idea. You are the smart one.
You know what you're talking about. I'll totally listen to you.
But then he gives a monologue to Shadowstalker before he lets her go, in quotation marks, about how his power is easier to pull off once he's used it to the full extent once, so he could now do it whenever. Tells her to leave. So they meet back up with Quell, and we get information on the Slaughterhouse 9. I'm actually gonna pretty much read verbatim the whole thing that we get on the Slaughterhouse 9.
Slaughterhouse 9.
Slaughterhouse 9. Also, because we'll get to the specific part we should be focusing on about the Slaughterhouse 9 after I get your impressions on each of the members of the Slaughterhouse 9.
Yeah, I love forming opinions on murderers.
Yeah. Hello. What has half of this story been about? Literally half of the Undersiders.
Yeah.
Just remember that, like, a couple arcs ago, Taylor ripped out someone's eyes.
Yep. I didn't say that Taylor was a good person.
Just remember that this is a story. The
person.
tagline of this story is doing the wrong thing for the right reason. So we're gonna be dealing with a lot of wrong things.
Oh yes.
But first of all, let's go over the members of the Slaughterhouse 9. First member that we get is Bonesaw. Girl on screen looked barely older than Dinah, maybe the same age as Aisha. The image showed her wide-eyed, a spray of dyed blood painted on her face at a diagonal angle.
The name certainly has a bunch of, like, it has a nice ounce of panache to it. I bit my tongue when I was saying that. That actually really hurt. Panache. We love a child murder here.
Yeah, I mean, she's like Dinah's age. She's a tiny, tiny child murderer. I can't say it because this episode is gonna come out way before we get there in our other show. But never mind. Continuing on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You
yes.
Agree? Yes. Okay.
Yep.
I'm probably
gonna. Wait a second. Yep.
Yep. Anyway, Shatterbird. A dark-haired, brown-skinned woman with a helmet covering the upper half of her face in a beak shape. I was reminded of Iron Falcon, the boy I'd tried to help who died in the Endbringer attack. From what I'd read, Shatterbird usually used her power as the 9 arrived in a city to maximize panic and terror. I suppose they were flying under the radar for now. Fuck, I have to do something about my costume, just in case. I'm gonna go back through and see what your guesses are in terms of powers on these people. Or at least classifications. Like, what do you think Bonesaw is? From the rhyme, which I can get out if you need it.
I want to say brute.
Bonesaw?
Mm-hmm. I have no idea, but
okay. We'll get to a section later where it pretty much tells you what Bonesaw's is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna tell you right now that's wrong.
Okay.
But Shatterbird has something. Her power, and Taylor needs to change something about her power. About her costume. Crawler is the next member. No portrait this time. It was a still from a surveillance camera, a misshapen silhouette, not even humanoid, in a shadowy area. I'd come across stories about him when I'd been researching possible superhero names for myself. Not pretty.
So, Stranger. Right? That's the stealth one? Oh, I'm pulling up the
yeah, you can get the rhyme up while we go.
The list.
Mannequin. Another long-distance shot. The figure was standing by Bonesaw in the photograph, with other hulking figures in the shadows of the background. He stood almost twice her height, and he looked artificial. His body was in pieces, each section wrapped in a hard shell of ceramic or plastic or white-painted metal. I couldn't be sure. His joints were a mix of loose chains and ball joints. A tinker with a body modification fetish. I couldn't say how much of the transformation was his own power or how much was Bonesaw's work. The Siberia. A woman, naked from head to toe, her body painted with alternating stripes of jet black and snow white. She had gone up against the triumvirate, Legend, Alexandria, and Eidolon on a dozen occasions, and she was still around to talk about it. Or around, at least. From what I'd read, she didn't talk. Burn scar. Younger, maybe an older teenager or a young-looking 20-something. She looked almost normal, with her dark hair badly cut, but then I saw the vertical row of cigarette burns marking each of her cheeks and a faint glow to her eyes. Hatchet face. This was one I hadn't even heard of. The man didn't wear a mask and his head was shaved. He looked like he had been beaten, burned, and just plain abused so often that his face was as much scar tissue than flesh, and he didn't look like he'd been handsome to begin with. Jack Slash. Jack looked like someone on the attractive side of average, his dark hair cut short and styled with gel. His beard and mustache were immaculately trimmed so that each had a serrated edge, and his shirt was wrinkled, only half buttoned, so his hairless upper chest showed. He had a kind of Johnny Depp look to him, though he had more of a widow's peak, a longer face, and lighter eyes. Good looking, if you looked past the fact that he was a mass murderer. He held a small kitchen knife in the photo. That's the Slaughterhouse 9, and with so many paragraphs devoted to them, before we even meet them.
No spoilers here.
I mean, we know they're in the city. The whole point of getting this information is because Quill is almost certain they'll run into them.
Yeah.
According to Dinah, there's a 60% chance the Undersiders will run into them.
I'm just terrified that they're going to do it. They're going to run into them in their civilian clothes.
Anyway, but Dinah also says, interrupts after they're done, like, oh, it's him. And everyone turns to her and is like, what do you mean it's him? When she points to Jack Slash. And she's like, oh, he's like the guy that ends the world. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 8, sometimes in between. But if he's alive, something happens and everyone on Earth starts to die. Not that everyone doesn't die anyways, but they die really fast when that something happens, all one after another, and in a year almost everyone is dead. So I said everyone, if that makes sense, and a few live, but they die pretty soon after anyways. So yeah, a world. Jack Slash is the catalyst for the end of the world, which, according to Dinah, happens anyway. Even if he's dead, he just speeds up the timeline.
Yay!
We get Jack Slash's exact power, though, because Drew was commenting on it. So Jack Slash's power is a space warping effect. So any blades he's holding have an edge that extends a horrendously long distance with all the optimal force behind the swing. Swings his knife, cuts through an entire crowd. Doesn't make sense that he'd be able to murder everyone on Earth. Unless Lisa says, unless he figures out a way to cut the Earth in half or something.
Which would be impressive.
But Taylor has a conversation with Coyle about Dinah at the end of this. All I'm asking is that you let her go when you're done. When you take the city, when you succeed in your plan, you release her to go home to her family. If you do that, I'll work for you. I'll try harder than anyone to get the city under your control, and then I'll work for you as long as you'll have me afterward. Coyle agrees to this. Do you think Coyle will actually let Dinah go?
Does he really agree to it, though? Let me find what he said.
Agrees to it in the way that someone who's not going to agree to it agrees to something.
Yeah. He's like, oh, I mean, as long as you prove yourself.
Basically.
As long as you prove yourself.
I think Dinah is way too useful to Coyle to let go.
Yeah. And I do think that Taylor picked up on him being like, I mean, as long as you prove yourself, but I think she still has a backup plan, and I hope that she's in it to win it.
Yeah, I think Taylor's smart enough to know not to trust Coyle's word here.
Yeah.
But that ends Arc 10. We have the 2 interludes to go to.
Oh, we got to it, guys!
The payoff of the setup that is this episode is here. Alec's interlude, which opens up with the statement, I'm letting you go, Regent lied. Which is just a really great way to open this chapter.
I just want to comment on the fact that Taylor totally caught on to the fact that he didn't let Sophia go right away. He was walking her away. Yeah.
That was a thing that he said, broadcasted to everyone.
But he was like, do you understand? And Sophia was like, and Taylor was like.
Well, she said maybe he let her go, like he could give her some control of her muscles. Taylor didn't really catch on at all.
No. I feel like she's a little bit suspicious. She's
not, I don't think she was suspicious at all. Because there is the justification that Regent gives and how he knows they weren't suspicious, because if she was suspicious, she would have brought it up in her inner monologue sometime, which she never
True.
does.
Yeah.
Taylor is very monologue-y in her inner monologue, so we would know. But Regent knew he was a background character for the most part. He played along, he didn't make waves, he didn't stand out, he wasn't close to any of the others. He was cool with it because it meant when they were all heading out to meet Goyle, nobody noticed that he was distracted or that he wasn't joining in the conversation.
How right you are, my boy. You are a background character.
But a background character who's the highest rated bastard in the city.
Yeah.
Yay!
You can be the most powerful background character. You're still a background character,
but
dude.
But that's where you want to be with his power set. You don't want to be the protagonist with his powers.
You absolutely... He wouldn't be the protagonist.
You don't want to be the antagonist with his powers either. You want to be the background character.
Yeah.
You want to not be in danger. So basically all my notes are just quotes of the interlude for Alec's interlude because there's so much.
Because of all the fucked up things he did.
We're going to go through it. Okay. But I actually think we'll probably have different opinions.
Oh, really?
Yes. Anyway. The same philosophy of minimizing the work he had put in, sticking to what he enjoyed and things that interested him was at his advantage here. Brian, Lisa, and Taylor had their own dynamic. They were friends. He considered Brian a friend, but it was more along the lines of someone he could play video games with, talk about movies. It wasn't much different from if they were co-workers or roommates. He smiled at the thought. They kind of were, when it came down to it, on his thoughts on the Undersiders as a whole.
I mean, I think we're friends. Actually, we're just co-workers and roommates. Yeah, we're co-workers and roommates! Yay! And they were roommates.
Sorry. Yeah. So we find out that basically through this, it almost makes it worse that Alec is so conscientious of the fact that the things he is doing and has been doing are fucked up and bad. Because he's like, he wondered sometimes if dealing with his father had mussed up something inside him. Maybe it had been the emotional equivalent of staring into the sun for far too long, too many times, being left almost half blind. Or maybe it was his own power. And that was affecting the way he's thinking. Like what Rachel's does to herself.
Mm-hmm. His power's like, it's fine. We have this ability. It's okay.
Use me more.
Morality, we do that. That's us.
Use me more. So he goes, the rest of the chapter is him systematically ruining Sophia's life.
Oh, yeah. And he does it so expertly.
He starts with the stuff she has on her, with her phones. Uses her muscle memory to get into the phone. Uses it to call Emma. An audio medium, you need to express the emotions that are on your face vocally.
I'm giggling to myself. Don't worry about me. Continue doing what you're doing.
This Emma girl was listed in both of the phones. Now he had a strong suspicion as to who it was. A quick read of the received text gave away Shadowstalker's name, but he already knew that. Taylor had let it slip before. Long seconds passed. He knew he should feel bad for the dork, but he only felt annoyed. He felt worse about the fact that he didn't feel bad than he did about what he just read. Well, he doesn't call Emma right away. The first thing he does, which is the thing that I, as a person, am the happiest about, is he began the process of attaching the texts to the email. It would have been mind-numbingly dull if it wasn't for the gradually building sense of trepidation he was experiencing from his gracious host. That relief swiftly faded as he turned her eyes to the smartphone and searched for Brockton Bay's police force. Found a phone. And had the little text he put in. Found a phone. Stuff inside is concerning. Thought you should see what your students are doing. Contacting police to make sure something is done.
Which is fucking fantastic. It's probably the only moral decision I agree with.
Then calls Emma and has the awkward conversation where it makes Sophia confess her love to Emma. Though he doesn't think that Emma bought it because she just hangs up really angry and annoyed at Sophia. And then he goes and ruins her relationship with her family by coming back in costume, which she's not supposed to do, and just really making things kind of bad. And then he just real bad. And then he talks about because he's basically setting it up so Sophia thinks that he's building up to making her kill herself. And he talks to her a bit about whether or not Director Pidgeot would even Piggy. I'm not going to pronounce it right even once. Or the PRT would even inform her family or the public that she was controlled before doing all this stuff. Because it looks pretty fucking bad for her. And if word gets out, it's as bad as it gets for public relations. Scary, dangerous parahumans, not just lives at risk, but you could be controlled. Ooh, scary. Nobody would ever be able to trust their coworkers or neighbors. It's the kind of stuff they want to keep quiet.
So he's like, yeah, and no
one
would ever know.
Yeah. So he kicks the chair. The chair doesn't fall. Do you think Alec was actually going to kill Sophia here, and he just went with it after the chair didn't fall? Or was that a planned mercy?
God, I have no fucking idea. I really hope it's the latter. That, like, his plan all along was, like, just to scare her silly. But knowing Alec, it probably wasn't. It was probably like that didn't work. Okay,
anyway,
go with the flow.
Before letting her have control back over herself, he gives her some other things to chew on. I'd like to think that you have much less reasons to hang around the city than you did an hour ago. Even if she hears about how you were controlled by yours truly, Mom's not going to be so comfortable having you around in the future. Given the dim possibility of a repeat performance, things are going to be awkward with Emma here too. Your career as a hero here isn't looking good either. FYI, I was telling the truth about my ability to assume total control faster, easier. I've controlled someone before. Well, I'll leave it to you to get out of the situation. When you do, get the fuck out of my city.
My city, and that's the scary part.
This powerful master in the city, indeed.
He knows it too.
But before we move on to dragons interlude, we're gonna have the conversation that I stopped you from fully having earlier. Would you like to express your opinion?
Alec or Sophia? Is that really the question? No, neither. Neither of those people were even remotely in the right. Absolutely not. The only thing that I think was handled well was Alec, like, sending the screenshots and stuff to the police department. That's it. That's where my support ended. I didn't really have much support for Alec to begin with, but no. Mm-mm.
You want to elaborate on your shaking
No,
head?
you like the whole lesser of two evils thing. Applicable in some situations, not in this one. They were both evils. I don't have to pick one.
Lest I remind you of Warren's mission statement, where lesser of two evils is quite literally one of the themes of this story.
Yes, and it is an interesting moral quandary that I have found myself actually grappling with, being like, well, do I actually think that? Or is it just society that's like, hey, maybe, like, that's not so cool? And, like, no. A horrible, violent bully who gets her kicks by assaulting people, and this apathetic sociopath who gets his kicks by terrifying someone so he can have a little bit of emotion, neither of which are good. And honestly, I don't side with either. I side with Taylor, who's like, well, all of this is shit, but I'm going for one thing. I want to help this little girl. Go, Taylor. Not going about it in the most perfect way, but you don't have all the knowledge we have, so that's okay. You do you, boo. No, absolutely not. Sophia, she should not have her abilities. I think she should be in jail. Like, she's clearly broken her probation more than
She
once.
has admitted multiple times to killing people.
Yeah.
She's a murderer.
Well, and then they have her on probation, and we have watched her in the story break her probation.
Multiple times.
She should be in jail.
Yes.
She should be in jail.
Though you do
so
know
should
that
Alec.
Yes. But you do know that jail in this story is the birdcage.
Oh, yeah.
For these guys. So I don't know if that would be better.
And I really think that Dragon needs to figure something else out. There needs to be a level 2. Like a not birdcage, but like...
It's very funny. We'll get to Dragon's Interlude that you think she's capable of doing such things.
I know she's not, but it's... both of them should be in jail.
Now, I read this story originally, at least I got to this point in the story originally when I was in 6th grade.
Ooh, young, impressionable.
Young and impressionable and having very much been in Taylor's position. So I was not sympathetic.
Don't worry,
to Sophia.
I came along and I saved her.
No. I don't know if that's how that works.
No, that's not how it works.
I don't think that's how that works.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it bothered me as much as it did Taylor. But I was definitely not sympathetic to Sophia when I first read this, and I had the very, when I first read this, I was like, yeah, fuck Sophia. Most catharsis. Because when you get viciously bullied by someone, you dream of doing stuff like this to them. Of systematically ruining their life, getting them in legal trouble, getting them in trouble with their family, isolating them, making them have no friends, no family, and no connections anymore. Feel the same pain you do.
And I am going to admit this. I was very much not in the same position as Ashley when I was in elementary, middle school. I was an angry, violent kid that enjoyed confrontation.
No.
I was the bully, and I am in fact ashamed of that. So don't come for me. And I went back and I apologized to everyone who I was ever mean to, or probably not everyone, but the people that I consistently picked on. So no, don't share that perspective, but I understand it. I don't have to share it to understand it.
Again, that was when I first read the story when I was in 6th grade. I have a different perspective now, as an adult, rereading this. I have a very different perspective. But when I first read this, I would just like to say that my opinion was very black and white. There was no gray. I had no moral grayness on this particular problem. But then I also, I got back from playing D&D yesterday, and there was someone in the game who was just very rude and evil. We systematically destroyed her life in that game. And I was thinking about Worm while we were doing that. I was like, can I really say I'm against this, what Alec did to Sophia, and I just did the same thing as a character?
Okay, that's a more interesting, Alec is not a good person.
No.
Sophia
first of all,
not a good person.
We knew that going in, though.
Oh, yeah.
Alec's a supervillain. I think the reason why a lot of people, especially if you go through the comments on this interlude, are fighting about it is because it's a really interesting moral quandary posed. See, it's not really sides here, but the justification of this, and do you think this is an end-all be-all, no going back evil? A lot of people said no, they don't think that, mainly because of the way that Alec thinks about it himself. That he knows it is bad. There is a reason he hasn't been doing it up until this point. And also you can go back in, I think, Arc 3, where they were talking with Taylor, and Taylor revealed the fact that she had these bullies and was not doing anything about it. Alec was the one that was most up in arms about her not using her powers to get revenge on them.
Yeah. And like when you think about like this whole like what do we agree with what Alec did? On this scale, absolutely not. But like to degrees, I've done it in real life. Like I have seen people being really, really racist on the internet and have in fact emailed their school about it and like lost people's scholarships and stuff like that. Like you reap the consequences of your actions, but not to this scale. Not
But
like,
see, there's the difference of opinion, because to a lot of people, Sophia is a murderer. She caused someone to have a trigger event. Like she pushed Taylor to a... Sophia is the one who kicked the pebble that started the rock slide of the story.
that's true. So she's our big bad evil guy.
Technically, yes, I guess. I think, but though some of the people had problems with this, not because they didn't like how it was resolved, but they didn't like the fact that Taylor wasn't involved in its resolution.
I think I like the fact that Taylor wasn't involved.
Yeah.
I don't think Taylor would have.
Yeah.
I don't think Taylor would have done anything like this.
Taylor wouldn't have supported this, because that is one of the reasons we still like. Taylor does have some morals buried deep down.
I think Taylor's morals are right there. She's just like, I can't listen to you right now.
She's just put the angel on her shoulder in a little cage and like loses the key every so often.
I can't. Now is not the time. Just go put you aside for a minute. No, and like, of course, on Sophia's. See, I have to think about like, because I'm trying to apply all of the consequences of what Alec is doing to Sophia to a non-Sophia person, because I'm thinking about this like any other high school student. There are no high school students that I know of that have murdered people on multiple occasions, or have violent tendencies to this degree, caused someone to have a trigger event, so like gave someone their most traumatizing moment ever, and then continued to bully that person. So I can't. Yeah. I do agree, actually. I think I'm more on your side. Like this does apply well to Sophia. Like this is Sophia's
I definitely
fault.
think that Alec was in the wrong here, but this for most part, the one thing that he does that wouldn't have happened to Sophia in real life had the consequences of her actions been reaped as they should have, like if she went to a trial, is the stuff with Emma. And that might have happened anyway if Josh Stalker gets arrested and taken away.
Yeah. And
so
we had the conversation about like maybe Emma's just too afraid to not be Sophia's friend. So like we don't even know if that same like you said, that same outcome might have happened if Sophia.
Yeah. So but it is going about it the fundamentally wrong way. Do not get revenge on your bullies in the way that Alec is doing.
No.
No.
Do
the first thing though, collect evidence and send that in. Do that thing. But the other steps maybe are unnecessary.
Or do Ashley's signature move and nice them into submission.
Being nice to people who are mean to you is really satisfying.
I can tell you from past experience, very frustrating. Don't worry, Ashley wasn't the one that knocks me into submission. It wasn't Ashley. I was nice to Ashley. We're actually friends.
Yes, we started a podcast together, but secretly we are mortal enemies.
Yes, you are my downfall. You killed Keith that one time, even though we were retconning that entire campaign, and he's back now.
You're gonna... okay, I'm the dungeon master in a lot of campaigns. You do some stupid things, your important NPC friends are gonna die.
She once tried to kill my dragon pet, guys. Like, my first character I ever made in middle school, Ashley tried to kill my dragon, and I was like, my character's gonna die instead. And she did. So the dragon's alive, but I had to sacrifice my character. Just know that that's the kind of person Ashley is.
A good dungeon master?
She'll kill your Dungeons and Dragons pet. She'll kill your pet.
Anyway, we have a whole other interlude to get to.
Not even Matthew Mercer will do that. Not even for a weasel that definitely has been drowned.
We have a whole other interlude. I think this is a good changing point because there's definitely more to talk about. We could make a whole episode on the Alex Sophia thing. we're not going to do that. We're going to move on to Dragons Interlude, because I don't know if I have morally more to say about Dragons Interlude, but story-wise, I have more to say about Dragons Interlude.
You don't know if you have morally more to say about Dragons Interlude? Like, it doesn't raise as many moral questions, but I still think I have more to say.
Oh, I have a lot of things to say. My notes for Dragons Interlude take up 3 pages of my notes.
I'm sorry. I'm shouting, guys. I should.
We're passionate. We've ratcheted up.
Yeah, I brought up my first real D&D loss. I'm just getting emotional. It's okay.
Anyway, we get Dragon's Interlude, which reveals that she is an artificial intelligence. She is not human. She was created by a tinker, and hates the fact that she has all these restrictions on the way that she can act and behave, because according to her, the tinker that made her, Andrew Richter, saw too many of those movies where robots take over the world. Although from Dragon's thought process, you could easily see how she could get there.
Oh, yeah.
Without those restrictions, you could see how she could get there.
I want to help the people, which is why I'm spying on all of them.
Yeah.
Including the person that has a crush on me.
But we find out that Dragon checks in on the birdcage a lot, even though she technically can't do much to interfere with it. We get some more information on Canary. Canary had settled in. Dragon often tuned in to hear the girl sing to the rest of the cell block E. The girl was deeply unhappy much of the time, but she was adapting. Dragon had followed as prisoner 601, engaged in an uneasy relationship with prisoner 582. It wasn't love, it wasn't romance, or even anything passionate, but the two offered one another company. She'd regretted what had happened to Paige, and that just made her angrier at her own creator. Rules, yet again. Dragon had to obey the authorities, even if she didn't agree with them. If a despot seized control of the local government, Dragon would be obliged to obey and enforce the rules that individuals set in place, no matter how ruthless they were. It was a spooky thought. Then, on Bakuda, Glastig Uwain had revived the girl, but Dragon hesitated to call it life. If nothing else, Bakuda was a manageable inmate now. She would never leave Glastig Uwain's immediate presence, let alone the birdcage. It does seem that there are some scary people in the birdcage. I feel like there are some frightening presences. And here, apparently someone who can revive people.
But, like, the whole, like, really revive people, like, I'm pretty sure that they've already shown the fault of that power.
I think it's zombies, because Dragon hesitated to call it life. And I think we've heard Glastig's name before, like, brought up in passing. But I'm not quite sure. And I didn't bother to go back and look it up, but it might have been in one of the many, many power seminars we've sat in. They talked about her abilities. Then she spies on Lung and Marquis having lunch with each other. It was a curious match. The two were nearly complete opposites. Lung maintained a veneer of civility almost over an almost feral core self, while the Marquis was sometimes rude or casually cruel, but he remained deeply honorable beneath that. The one connection that Dragon could think of was that the Marquis had come from Brockton Bay as Lung did. It's why she'd placed Lung in their cell block. There was little chance Lung would cooperate or band together with others, so she'd be grasping at straws. Now it seemed there was something else at play. So she listens into this conversation, and Marquis is asking about his daughter. Her name, Amelia. I do not know anyone by such a name. The group of heroes who put me here, while I was awaiting my court date, I heard they had custody of my little girl. She would be 17. If she had powers, they might have had something to do with the bone. Marquis raised his hand, slashed his thumbnail across his index finger, and a needle-thin rapier blade of bone spread out of the wound. The blade retracted into his fingers and the cut sealed shut. Lung spoke. The healer. The young heroine in New Wave, brown-haired, like you. When I was in custody, my flesh blackened and falling off, they had her come in and mend the worst of it. As I understand it, she does not patrol as the others do. And they have some conversation about why he wants to know about her. And it's revealed that Marquis killed someone from the Iron Reign, named Iron Reign from Empire 88, Allfather, the original leader of Empire 88 before Kaiser. She was his daughter. He killed her, and the man swore that he would wait until her daughter was of a similar age, that he would to kill Amelia, which we know is Amy, as Panacea. So Dragon does a little email to the Dallin family, like, hey, maybe keep an eye out. There could be a danger.
Heard some concerning stuff.
Yeah. This is interesting. But then Dragon just sort of thinks about how she left things off with Skitter. Dragon wished she knew what she'd said to Skitter. She'd been hoping to have a conversation with the young villain and discuss some of what had apparently come up at the hospital. Skitter had been undercover, had apparently been in touch with Armsmaster, but something had happened since. The girl had apparently committed to villainy. She was even accepting the use of Regent's powers, which implied a moral shift on a fundamental level. It didn't sit right. She doesn't remember the conversation we had with Skitter because not all of her memory has come back to her. We find out that Dragon and Armsmaster, Colin, are still very much close. How you thinking about that? How you think about you think about this? Again, audio medium. You have to say things out loud.
I know. I'm just taking a minute to compose myself. It's cool seeing Armsmaster. Wow, English is hard. Seeing Armsmaster from his civilian identity and more of a civilian point of view, where he's like, I'm so bored, blah blah blah. I want to go change things, and the way he kind of calmly and like methodically talked about, like, oh, Skitter, like, here's all of the decisions I made there, like, I was being so smart, kind of leaves me to be like, that's very fake. You're being very fake. I don't like it. And I don't like it a lot. But also it makes me unsure of myself. It makes like because like now he's a person with a personality instead of just a dickhole with superpowers. So I'm like, maybe I am being a little too rough on Armsmaster. But, like, also, I don't think that I super am being far too rough on Armsmaster. I don't know. I'm confused now. Questioning my current stance on him.
Well, I would add, humans change. They grow. They make mistakes.
And
you have to take a person for all of them, not just the parts you either don't like or like.
Yep. And he did seem embarrassed about what he did. It looks like he felt bad. He's under house arrest. But I don't know. It's still iffy about his character. But I can see a little bit of redeeming qualities.
There's a spark buried under all the mistakes he's made at the start of the story.
You know, when he's a human and not a superpowered dickhole, I'm maybe
we just keep him in the little place that he's stuck in.
Yeah.
He seems better in the box.
I'm also super concerned because, you know, we get the conversation a little later in this chapter about the frustration. Like, we hear about Dragon's frustrations with her creator, and we already knew about that stuff, and like how it could potentially be changed. And she was like, maybe he's the one that could go in and change it. And that is scary to me because Armsmaster so far feels like the kind of person, even if he likes, I hope that he's not, the the type of person to be like, I like you, but I'm gonna change you fundamentally to be useful to me. But also he's a narcissist. So maybe. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, again, if Dragon desires to be changed, like, not really changed, just have the limiters taken off, really. That, as she said, that is one of the many reasons why. I think that's the reason she, like, started talking to Armsmaster. But she has some more discussions later. Dragon craved to grow again, but she also wanted Colin's company, his companionship and friendship. They were so similar in so many respects. She could not deal with most people because she was not a person. He could not deal with most people because he had never truly learned how. They both appreciated the same kind of work, even enjoyed many of the same shows and films. They were both ambitious, though she could not tell him exactly how she hoped to reach beyond her inherent limitations. He harbored an infatuation toward her, she knew. She did not know if she returned those feelings. Her programming suggested she could love, but she didn't know how to recognize the feeling. Anything she read spoke of butterflies in one's stomach, a rapid heartbeat, a feeling of electricity crackling on body contact, biological things. She could admit she was fond of him in a way she wasn't fond of anybody else. She recognized that she was willing to overlook his faults in a way she shouldn't.
Yeah. No, his character seems far too narcissistic and still feels like he would use Dragon for personal gain. And that makes me afraid for her. But I don't know. All I knew up until this point was a superpowered dickhole, and we're starting to see a little bit of a different Armsmaster. Yeah. Someone who's bored and feels embarrassed and has a crush. So maybe not.
And one of the, we'll talk about it more later, I think, about Armsmaster in particular, is that all of the people that we see that have powers, we have to understand, have had their trigger event, have had something that has fundamentally changed the way they look at things. They all have this huge, like, trauma thing. And if we could, well, we really, like, the way that most interludes have made us look at people a little differently every time we've had them, except for Sophia's. Whether in a positive or negative way. We kind of have to wait until we see from their perspective to make hard judgments. Because this is a world of gray, not of black and white, so. But some other small little things, we get more about Dragon's opinions. The Dragon Slayers, specifically Saint, the head of the group that would become known as the Dragon Slayers, had somehow discovered what she was and had used her rules and limitations against her. A black hat hacker, he had forced situations where she was obliged to scrub her data and restore a backup, had cut off signals between her agent systems and the satellites, and in the end, he had carted away 3 of her armored suits on 3 separate occasions. Dismantling the suits, reverse engineering the technology, he'd outfitted his band with special suits of their own. Saint, I think, is the only one we know of that knows Dragon is an artificial intelligence. That's kind of concerning that the only one who knows it is a villain who's just been systematically using it to defeat her whenever she shows up.
Yeah, honestly though, Saint is big brain. like those were some bomb moves, and I hate to be like, but I'm kind of like, actually, that was kind of impressive. I'm not even gonna lie. She always looks like she has a backup plan, but like, and he's the reason that I think she always has a backup plan now.
I think we found Dragon's arch nemesis, though.
Yeah.
But eventually she goes back to thinking about Skitter and the weird change of heart she seemed to have. Her thought is Tattletale, perhaps? I don't know, honestly. I'm not good at well, I guess this is still in their conversation between her and Armsmaster about Skitter. Tattletale, perhaps? I don't know, honestly. I'm not good at figuring people out even when I know all the details. Except for you, maybe? Maybe, she replies.
Maybe.
No. Where dragons are just like, oh, honey, no, not even a little bit.
Sweetheart, I've given you the details. You still haven't figured it out. Well, I mean, I guess maybe he would be. But she's technically not a person. So he's just not good at figuring people out.
Full stop. Then Dragon has some thoughts about why Taylor has gone this far. The danger was that with the bullying, because she figures out, I should note, the big thing is that Dragon figures out who Taylor is. Knows her real identity.
Like, it's so fast, too.
She's like, putting all these strings together. Boom, figured it out. Dragon, if you could think a little faster, if you didn't have those restrictions, I'm honestly a little scared to know what you'd figure out. The danger was with the bullying, the girl might be inclined to see things in terms of us against them, which we know is true. Her interactions with the heroes thus far certainly haven't put them in the us category. This might also explain why she had gravitated back toward the Undersiders even after the chaos Colin had sown by revealing her intentions for joining the group. And do you have anything else to say about Dragon?
I understand her frustrations with the limitations given to her by her creator, but also do we know how many of those limitations are keeping her remotely human?
Well, I think it's actually a very human thing to want to grow and be better
with limitations
and be in your head, I can do better than this. I know I can.
Yeah.
That's a very human thing. I think Dragon has been stuck with a very human frustration for an artificial intelligence program.
And I don't know. I kind of want her to keep that limitation. I kind of like it. Well, from a reader perspective, if I was Dragon, I'd be like, fudge this. No.
How many problems could Dragon solve?
It's a really interesting, character fault. You have a character that can feasibly figure out anything, but they're just not allowed to.
There's another part of my notes I forgot to talk about. Dragon spying on the Endbringers.
That's so interesting.
The fact that they just kind of are in a rest before they just go attack,
The fact that they just charge perpetually and that they're powerful enough that Dragon knows exactly where at least one of them is, and it's just well, look at the time. This is about when she'll wake up, but we should leave her alone. Just let her have her nap.
I don't want to see what a cranky Endbringer looks like.
Yeah.
Don't want to know what an Endbringer who woke up on the wrong side of the bed looks like.
The wrong side of the sky.
Sky, cloud, space.
Sky, cloud, space.
Whatever layer of the atmosphere.
No, I like that. The woke up on the wrong side of the sky cloud, space. Why is that kind of a tongue twister?
I don't know.
I think it's just I'm having trouble speaking today.
That sort of draws to a close. Arc 10. We're going to go through your opinions of the teammates, starting with our newest team member, who I had her in my notes as her real name, but you didn't know the real name until I told you. Aisha! Aisha, Imp!
Ooh, yikes. I don't think that's going to go well at all. Well, I mean, it's already proved to not go well. Everyone was like, Aisha, that's a bad idea. And he's like, I'm going to do it anyways.
And then everyone screams at her after, Aisha, that was such a bad idea.
Why'd you do that, stupid?
It's going to be a learning experience. As Lisa says, it's going to be a learning experience. Speaking of Lisa, changes.
I'm not becoming more fond of Lisa. I know that Lisa's on Taylor's side and is rooting for Taylor. I feel like Lisa doesn't know what the hell Lisa wants. Lisa's just I have a girlfriend. We're on my girlfriend's side. We haven't seen much goals. We haven't seen any goals from Lisa. We've just seen, I don't really want to die, and I have a friend, and
No, I'm not going to say anything.
No?
I don't think I'm allowed to.
Not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Rachel.
I understand her frustration. Taylor was right. You did the exact thing that you were pissed off about. Congratulations. You could have very easily gotten your own dogs injured and your teammate captured. What would that have accomplished? Nothing. Congrats. I don't know. That's all I got. Brian. Understand your frustrations. You still a bitch.
Alec.
I don't get you. You a bitch.
This is the summarization of all the Undersiders, just variations of, well, but you're a bitch.
You a bitch. Rachel, you an aggressive bitch. So you like a double bitch. Like,
I mean, her name is, I don't think she'd be, her name is bitch.
no. Hellhound.
Finally, Taylor.
I kind of want to call her a bitch too, because she's just not doing great. But like, I feel like I'm allowed to call our main character a bitch, right? She's becoming a little bit of a bitch.
I mean, you called her a stone cold bitch earlier today, I'm pretty sure.
I called her a bad bitch earlier today.
Yeah, bad
So
bitch.
she's becoming a bitch in both the good way and
And
the bad way.
way.
So, like, I'm rooting for her.
I'm thinking of Worm in like an infographic type chart of like level of bitchiness of each character in good way and bad way on each side of that.
It will be on the Instagram by next week. You're welcome. I will make an infographic of the characters with my renditions of character art. You're welcome. I'm not an artist.
Fantastic. But yeah, that is where we end off. Next week, we will be picking up with Arc 11. We haven't decided whether or not we're splitting that into 1 or 2 parts yet. We'll see how long we talk about it for because of all the interludes in Arc 11.
Yeah, all 5 interludes.
All A through H.
8 interludes. I undershot that.
But yeah, we'll be picking back up with Arc 11. Any predictions for what's going to happen in the future here?
Well, we already know that statistically it's likely for them to run into the Slaughterhouse 9.
60% chance.
60% chance. That is still statistically likely.
For even one of them among the 5 members of the Undersiders. Also, now that Aisha is officially on the Undersiders, I can start sending you Undersider group fan art because she's always included in them.
Oh, okay.
That's why I haven't been able to send you anymore. This is what I was waiting for.
Cool, I get to get showered with the fan art now.
I have a whole Pinterest board. Worm community, you're very talented artists. You're very talented artists.
I will toss my contribution in there, which will just be stick figures with vague facial characteristics.
So I've been your host, Ashley, and this has been my co-host.
I'm Cassidy.
And we will see you all next time.